What would you do if the person you love the most asked for your permission to betray you? I never thought I'd face that question, until my wife looked me in the eyes and shattered everything I believed about love, loyalty, and our marriage. As I drove to work, I couldn't shake off the conversation Molly had started over dinner the night before. It wasn't the first time she'd brought it up, but lately, it seemed to be coming up more often. I couldn't understand why it mattered so much to her or why she kept circling back to the same question. She wanted to know about my past, the women I had been with before we committed to each other. Not just how many, but whether I ever thought about them, if they ever crossed my mind in moments of intimacy. It felt like there was only one acceptable answer to that, a firm, unwavering no. Over the last 5 years of marriage, Molly and I had built something solid: trust, respect, love, and true companionship. Our relationship was everything I had ever wanted, a perfect balance of all the things that truly mattered. We had fulfilling careers, a beautiful home in a wonderful neighborhood, and a connection I believed was unbreakable. My name is William Harrison, but most people just call me Billy. I've been fortunate enough to have both the time and resources to enjoy life, to travel, indulge in fine wine and great food, and experience the best entertainment has to offer. Molly and I have always shared a passion for exploring new places, immersing ourselves in different cultures, and appreciating the finer things in life. I stand tall, with blonde hair and blue eyes, a reflection of my Nordic roots, blended with a trace of Irish ancestry that, on rare occasions, stirs up my temper. But I learned long ago that words carry more weight than fists. As a kid, I was constantly on the move, playing football and hockey year-round, and spending hours lifting weights in the basement. Even now, with a demanding career, I make it a priority to stay in shape. I still manage to carve out time for jogging, playing in an adult soccer league, and joining a hockey game on the pond whenever I get the chance. Staying active has always been important to me, and thankfully, it fits naturally into my routine. Molly, on the other hand, has always been effortlessly beautiful. Her sparkling eyes, flawless skin, and warm, inviting smile make people feel comfortable around her. She has this rare charm that draws others in, making them feel seen and heard. Molly isn't just a good listener, she's the kind of person who makes you feel like the most important person in the room. Whether it's with friends or colleagues, she gives her undivided attention, and people naturally open up to her. There's something magnetic about Molly, a kind of energy that makes her the center of any gathering. Her warmth and sociability often lead to conversations that could border on flirtation, but she has a natural way of keeping things light without crossing any lines. Despite the attention she receives, both for her looks and her lively personality, she never lets it make her superficial. She's tall for a woman, with striking blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that turns heads wherever she goes. Both men and women envy her confidence and grace. But if there's one thing that stands out the most, it's her perfectly sculpted legs and toned hips, features she maintains with dedication. She spends 4 or 5 evenings a week at the gym, not just to stay in shape but because she genuinely enjoys the process. For her, working out is more than just exercise, it's a form of relaxation and self-care. I'd be lying if I said I don't find myself reaching out to touch her whenever she walks by. It's almost instinctive. And the best part? She never seems to mind. When I take a step back and think about it, Molly is practically perfect, especially for me. There's only one tiny flaw though, and it's the one thing that occasionally leads to disagreements between us. Emotionally, she rarely lets things escalate into full-blown arguments, but when she does, well, that's another story. Molly is the kind of person who, once she's made up her mind, stands by it with unwavering conviction. She holds firm to her opinions, especially on matters that can't easily be proven with facts or clear evidence. This sometimes makes her stubborn, and once she's set on something, convincing her otherwise can feel like an uphill battle. We got married not long after finishing college, having been together for the last 2 years of university. Before we tied the knot, Molly hadn't had many different partners, but for me it was a different story. Back in high school, through the summer after graduation, and even during my first 2 years of college, I had a bit of a wild streak. I saw it as a time to be free, to experience as much as possible, and I wasn't shy about seeking out those experiences. At 19, I found myself in a situation most guys my age could only dream of. I became one of the first intimate partners of an older, divorced woman. She was experienced, confident, and unafraid to take charge. With her, I learned things that no one my age could have taught me. She showed me the art of truly pleasing a woman, guiding me in ways that made me more attentive and patient. She made sure I understood that intimacy wasn't just about my own satisfaction, but about making sure my partner was fully satisfied first. When Molly and I had talked about our pasts, I had been honest about my experiences. She always said she appreciated the way I knew how to please her, but I could sense a hint of something else. Maybe curiosity, maybe envy, about the variety of experiences I had before we met. These days, I worked as a mechanical engineer at Abbott Labs, where I focused on designing and testing injection-molded parts for medical devices. I loved the work, but lately, I had started noticing a subtle shift in Molly's behavior. She wasn't as lighthearted as she used to be. She seemed a little more withdrawn, less talkative, less engaged in the small moments we used to share so naturally. Despite this, our physical connection remained strong. If anything, there were nights when Molly would come home late from work and surprise me with an almost urgent passion, like she needed to prove something to herself or to me. The last time that happened, something about it felt different, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I could tell right away that something had shifted in Molly. Her desire was undeniable, like something had sparked a fire in her. After an intense and passionate night together, I pulled myself out of bed and headed downstairs to start dinner, letting her take a moment to unwind. Meanwhile, Molly was lost in thought. She kept turning the same question over in her mind. If Billy really loves me as much as he says he does, he'll be open to this conversation. We'll get through it together and come out even stronger. A part of her feared she was just hoping for the best, but she clung to the belief that we could face anything as long as we were honest with each other. Determined, she finally joined me in the kitchen, where I was finishing up a shrimp salad and cornbread, pouring wine into glasses, trying to create a relaxed atmosphere. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she needed to say. "Billy, I'm really sorry. That's not what I meant earlier," she started, her voice soft but urgent. "I need to tell you what's been on my mind. But before I do, I want you to remember that I love you. I love our life together more than anything. Our relationship means the world to me, and I never want you to doubt that." Hearing those words only made my stomach tighten. Something was off. I put down the bottle of wine and looked her in the eyes, trying to read between the lines. "Molly, you're making me really worried right now," I said carefully. "Just be honest with me. Are you involved with someone else? Have you been unfaithful?" Her eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, I thought I had hit the mark. But then she flinched, shaking her head as if trying to find the right words. "Billy, no. I haven't been with anyone else, not with anyone including Nick," she said, her voice firm but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "It hasn't been easy for me to bring this up, but you have to believe me. My love is only for you." Nick. The name hit me like a cold gust of wind. I didn't know what to focus on first. The fact that she felt the need to deny an affair with this Nick guy, or the way she spoke about him, like there was something unspoken lingering just beneath the surface. She hesitated, then continued. "Nick is just a young guy, Billy. There's no chance I could fall in love with him. It's just that, before I met you, I didn't have as much experience as you did, and sometimes I feel like—" Her voice trailed off, and I could feel the weight of what she was about to say pressing down on both of us. "I missed my chance, Billy," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before we got married, before we became us, I never really got to explore everything." I stared at her, my grip tightening around the wine glass. My heart was pounding in my chest, not from anger yet, but from something worse. Fear. Molly's eyes searched mine, desperate for understanding. "Billy, I love you. I want to spend my life with you, grow old with you. This has nothing to do with love. It's purely physical," she pleaded. "I need to experience this, not because I don't love you but because I do. Please, if you let me do this, I swear I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll never change, Billy. This is just a part of me loving you." I felt my body tense as I slowly pushed my chair back and stood up. The look in my eyes must have been enough to shake her, because for the first time since this conversation started, she looked genuinely scared. "Good. She should be. Do you even hear yourself?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You betrayed me by even talking about this with him, by discussing details of what you wanted to do with him. Do you know how that feels? And the fact that you kissed him?" I scoffed bitterly. "That's just as much a betrayal as if you had actually slept with him." Molly gasped, shaking her head as if trying to deny the weight of my words. "I was stupid," she admitted, her voice shaking. I believed, that your love for me was as deep as mine for you. But I could never bring myself to hurt you the way you're hurting me right now." I let out a bitter laugh, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You don't even realize how much damage you've done, do you?" I shot back. "How much this has wrecked us." She sighed, exasperated. "Billy, please. Stop being dramatic," she said, trying to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Dramatic. That word hit harder than anything else. I took a step back, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "You actually think this won't hurt our love? Our marriage?" For the first time I saw it, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. The quiet realization that this conversation, this entire situation, had already crossed a line. That things were already broken. And yet, even as guilt weighed on her, I saw something else, something that made my stomach twist. She was still planning to see him. Despite everything. Despite the fight. Despite the tears. She was still thinking about Nick. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my mind racing, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. I needed air. I needed space. An hour later, my phone vibrated with a new voice message from Molly. I didn't listen to it. I wasn't sure I could. Molly's plea. I'm talking to you, Billy. Please, let's just put this behind us and work on our relationship. Her voice trembled in the voicemail. Please try to understand. Just come back to me. She checked her phone again before bed, hoping, praying, for a response. But there was nothing. No missed calls. No messages. The silence was deafening. Curling up under the covers, she stared at the empty side of the bed, the place where Billy should have been. Her chest ached with regret, and despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. When it finally did, it was restless, filled with anxious dreams and silent tears. Billy's escape. I couldn't stay there. Not that night. Not with her. So, I did the only thing that made sense. I left. I drove to the Hilton just a few blocks away and rented a room, needing space to clear my head. The thought of sleeping next to her, pretending everything was fine, was unbearable. The next morning, as Molly stirred awake, she instinctively reached across the bed, expecting to find me there. When her hand met only cold sheets, a sinking feeling formed in her chest. Still groggy, she sat up and scanned the room. "Billy?" she called out. No response. She quickly got up and checked the guest bedroom. Empty. The couch. Nothing. It wasn't until she peeked out the window that reality truly set in. My car wasn't in the driveway. I hadn't come home. Panic settled in as she grabbed her phone. Still no messages. No missed calls. Just silence. Her heart pounded. She had convinced herself that no matter how painful this was, she could fix it. She truly believed that her love, her attention, her devotion would heal the cracks she had created in our marriage. That somehow we'd come out stronger than before. But now, standing alone in the quiet house for the first time, she wasn't so sure. Billy's focus. On Wednesday morning, as soon as Molly left the house for work, I returned, not to talk, not to argue, but to finish what I had started before my world had been turned upside down. I went straight to the garage, gathered my tools, and set my mind to a different kind of repair. Not my marriage, I wasn't ready for that, but something I could fix. The van. I installed the last solar panel, completed the electrical wiring, set up the Wi-Fi connections, and even replaced the cassette in the toilet. By Thursday, the tanks were full and everything was working perfectly. A small but necessary victory. Molly's doubt. By Thursday night, she couldn't take it anymore. Her fingers hovered over her phone before finally typing out another message. "Billy, please don't disappear like this again without telling me where you are. I need to know you're okay. I love only you and I will always love only you. You don't have to go through this alone. I'm right here." Her hands shook as she hit send. I thought we were unbreakable, that we'd always be together. But now I don't know anymore. A week ago, she had been certain of our future. Now, for the first time, she feared she had lost me forever. "I never imagined," I said, my voice tight with anger, "that you could ask me to approve of your affair and then expect us to go on as if nothing had changed." I shook my head, trying to process the sheer audacity of it. "You say you love me, that you want us. But how can you possibly expect me to accept this?" Molly exhaled sharply, clearly frustrated. "Billy, why are you twisting this into something it's not?" she snapped. "He's not my partner. He's just a one-night stand. That's all it is." I let out a bitter laugh. "Just a one-night stand? You talk to him, you're making plans with him for the weekend, and then, what? On Monday you'll suddenly be the perfect wife again?" Molly's expression softened. She reached for my hand, her voice turning pleading. "Billy, listen to me. I promise on Monday I will show you a whole new level of passion. I will make you forget all of this." I pulled my hand away. "Molly," I said, my voice low and firm, "you have always been the best wife a man could ask for. But you can't be that woman and ask me to stand by while you run off with someone else." Something in her face shifted, guilt, regret, or maybe just frustration that I wouldn't give in. She turned away and retreated into the kitchen, sinking into a chair, staring at me with helpless desperation. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions from boiling over. "Molly, I will never accept the idea of you being intimate with someone else while staying married to me. I said, my voice steady but heavy with finality. If you want to be with someone else, then get a divorce. Go be free, do whatever you want. But don't ask me to stand by and watch while you do it. What you're asking of me hurts more than you realize. Molly swallowed hard, her eyes filling with something I couldn't quite place. Anger? Sadness? Fear? I took another deep breath and continued, there's only one way I can even consider moving past this, Molly. You end it. Right now. No more conversations, no more one last time, no more seeing him this weekend. You cut him out completely. And then, you agree to go to counseling with me so we can actually work on us. Molly stared at me, torn between her desires and the consequences of her actions. I could see the war raging inside her. On one hand, I was everything to her, her home, her safe place, the man she had built a life with. And yet, she had betrayed me, wounded me in a way I wasn't sure could ever fully heal. She tried to convince herself that what she wanted wasn't wrong. Billy had his past. He had been with other women before me. And yet, I had never done this to her. The weight of her choices crushed down on her, and for the first time she truly felt trapped. Trapped between what she thought she needed and the reality of what she had already broken. Meanwhile, I had made up my mind. After Molly left for work on Thursday, I set everything in motion. I needed one last chance, one final attempt to remind her of us, of what we had built. I spent the day planning. I was going to give her an unforgettable, incredible Friday night, one that would make her see what she was about to throw away. This was it. My last attempt to save our marriage. I took a deep breath before responding. Good luck, Molly. If there's anything I can do to support you through this, let me know. Maybe I can help ease your pain in some way. It breaks my heart that we're fighting like this. We used to be an example of what a strong and healthy marriage should be. Now it feels like everything we believed in is falling apart. I wasn't sure if she truly understood what she had done to us. Maybe she thought this was just a rough patch, something we could brush off with time. But I knew better. Trust, once broken, isn't something you can glue back together overnight. Later that evening, I met with a divorce lawyer. It was a conversation I never imagined having, yet there I was, sitting across from someone who was laying out the details of how to end my marriage. The lawyer explained that since Molly and I earned similar incomes and had no children, the process would be fairly straightforward. The only potential dispute was my retirement account. Over $200,000 in deferred tax savings, built through years of careful contributions. Whether it would be considered shared property was still up for debate. As I walked out of the office, reality sank in. This was real. I was preparing for a life without her. That night, Molly suggested we go out for dinner. Let's focus on celebrating our marriage instead of talking about this as if it's our last meal together, I said as we sat at the table. Her expression darkened. It really upsets me that you're doubting our relationship, she said, her voice laced with frustration. I've told you over and over, I only love you. I stared at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. This is something I have to deal with on my own, Billy? It has nothing to do with you, she insisted. I shook my head. Molly, how can you say that? This has everything to do with me. With us. She sighed, clearly wanting to change the subject. Let's put this conversation on hold for now. First, let's take a shower, with wine, she added, forcing a playful smile. Then we'll eat and we'll move forward. We were destined to be together, Billy. You are mine and I am yours. Her fingers brushed against my hand, her voice dropping to a whisper. Please just be with me tonight. Let's forget the stress of the last few days and remind ourselves what we mean to each other. I felt my stomach tighten. There she was, trying to fix something that couldn't be patched up with passion and empty promises. She didn't understand that what I needed wasn't this. What I needed was the truth. And deep down, I wasn't sure if she was capable of giving it to me. That night I gave in. I whispered my love to her, and for a brief moment we lost ourselves in something that felt real, passionate, intense, almost like it used to be. Afterward, she lay beside me, her body relaxed, a soft smile on her lips. I feel so content, she murmured before drifting off to sleep. But when morning came, reality returned. Molly woke up around 8:30, stretching lazily before glancing at the clock. It was time to get ready. Nick was supposed to pick her up at 11 o'clock. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, almost like she was closing the door on something important. Maybe she felt it too, that this moment between us had been a goodbye in disguise. She looked over at me, searching my face for reassurance. But I wasn't calm. I wasn't okay. Sensing my turmoil, she reached for my hand. Billy, she whispered. This pain will pass. I promise. We're meant to be together, forever. I looked at her, overwhelmed with sadness. How could she be so sure? How could she believe we were still unbreakable when I was drowning in doubt? She blushed at my silence, her confidence wavering for just a moment. Tears welled up in her eyes, and before I could say anything, she quickly got up, disappearing into the bathroom. When she emerged, fully dressed and ready to leave, the weight of what was happening hit me like a brick. I took a deep breath. "Molly," I said quietly, my voice steady but full of something unshakable. "Our night is over. You made your choice. A casual weekend fling over your marriage. Those kisses? They don't mean anything anymore." Her face twisted in frustration. "Billy, please stop. It's not what you think," she begged. "This is the only time. And I deserve it. You had plenty of women in the past to think about. I don't have any experiences like that. I need this, physically. It's not love. It won't affect us." I stared at her, barely able to comprehend the words coming out of her mouth. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door, but just before stepping out, she turned back. She smiled, small, brave, but laced with guilt. Then, as if she thought it would fix everything, she kissed me gently. "From Sunday night on," she whispered, "I'll be the perfect wife again." And then she was gone. With one final declaration of love, Molly looked at me and said goodbye. "Goodbye, dear," she whispered, her voice soft but unwavering. I lifted my hand weakly, offering her a half-hearted wave as she walked out the door. Then she was gone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, trying to come to terms with what had just happened. The house felt unbearably empty, like the walls were caving in around me. With a heavy heart, I finalized my letter, one that I had spent the entire night writing. It wasn't just for Molly. It was for our friends, our families, the people in our lives who had always seen us as the perfect couple. I scheduled it to be sent at exactly 9 a.m. on Monday, knowing I wouldn't be here to deal with the aftermath. By the time I stepped out the door, I had already made my decision. I climbed into my van, turned the key in the ignition, and drove away from my old life. Meanwhile, by Saturday afternoon, Molly and Nick had already had brunch and checked into the hotel he had booked for the weekend. He was eager, too eager, to make the most of their time together. He hoped to convince her to stay the entire weekend, to keep this moment going as long as possible. After another round of intimacy, Nick leaned against the bed, looking at Molly with excitement. "Tell me you're happy," he said, brushing a hand over her arm. "Tell me you don't regret this." Molly gave him a small smile, but something in her expression had shifted. "I'm here, aren't I?" she answered, avoiding the question. Nick grinned, satisfied with that answer for now. "I can't wait for our next time together. Please tell me you feel the same." Molly didn't respond. They spent most of the day together, losing themselves in the physical side of things, but by the time dinner rolled around, something had changed. Sitting across from Nick at the restaurant, she felt nothing. No real excitement, no deep emotional connection. Their conversation was nothing more than small talk, and every second that passed, the emptiness inside her grew. As the evening dragged on, she found herself constantly checking her phone, waiting, hoping, for a message from me. But there was nothing. No response. Not even a read receipt. Her chest tightened. She hesitated, then called me. Straight to voicemail. Disappointed, she sent one final message. "Billy, I love you. Are you all right? Please reassure me that you're okay. This whole situation has been a terrible mistake. My heart belongs to you forever. I'll be home as soon as possible. I just want to hold you and tell you how much I love you. Please, please just let me know that you're okay." She stared at the screen, waiting for something, anything. But there was only silence. Molly stepped into the house, immediately sensing that something was off. It wasn't just the emptiness, the unsettling silence, or the heavy air that lingered after days of unanswered messages. It was something more. She glanced around and noticed missing items, paintings, framed photographs. Then her eyes landed on the fireplace. The sculpture of a bison, a treasured piece crafted by Billy's uncle, was gone. A wave of anxiety rushed through her. Billy wouldn't just rearrange things, would he? She pulled out her phone, scrolling frantically through her messages. Still no response. Heart pounding, she dialed his number, pressing the phone tightly against her ear. Straight to voicemail. Again. She tried to steady her breathing, but panic was creeping in. Something was wrong. Then she saw it, the letter. Billy had left her a farewell message, one she had missed in her rush to check her phone. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper, her eyes darting across the words. "Molly, whatever love you had for me, if it ever truly existed, was nothing compared to what I felt for you." She blinked, reading the sentence again, refusing to believe it. "I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe that we were stronger than this, that you wouldn't throw away what we had for something so shallow. But you did. And now I can't stay. Her knees weakened and she had to grip the table for support. Her eyes trailed downward, catching something else, tear-stained sheets on the bed. A painful reminder of what she had destroyed. Then her gaze fell on the floor beside it. Their wedding photo. Ruined. The glass was shattered, the once perfect image of them cracked and torn. She gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth as she kept reading. You didn't match what I deserved, and I was foolish to believe otherwise. You've hurt me more than anyone ever has. You tore my love from my heart and crushed it under your feet. Her chest tightened. She struggled to breathe. Your betrayal, was it even worth it? Did it bring you the satisfaction you were chasing? And if it did, how long until you crave something else? How long before you seek another temptation to indulge in? Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to keep reading. You'll never tell me about the next time. But I know there will be a next time. Because trust is something I can no longer give you. And without trust there is no love. Molly clutched the letter to her chest, the words cutting into her like a blade. Billy was gone. And for the first time she truly understood what that meant. I had destroyed the wedding album, tearing pages, burning parts of the photos in the fireplace, watching our memories turn to ash just like our marriage had. But that wasn't enough. I sent emails. To our friends, our family, our colleagues, everyone who knew us. I laid out the truth about Molly's betrayal, my decision to leave, and the reality of what had happened between us. She would have her chance to tell her side, to twist things however she wanted. But I wasn't going to let our history be rewritten by lies. She had chosen this path. Now she had to live with the consequences. Molly's realization. That night, Molly lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with regret. The weight of her choices pressed down on her. It wasn't just the loss of Billy, it was the realization that she had ignored every warning, every chance he had given her to turn back. She had been stubborn, selfish, obsessed with the idea that she deserved to fulfill her desires, no matter the cost. And now, her life was in ruins. Billy was gone. And she knew without a doubt that the consequences of her betrayal would haunt her for the rest of her days. Billy's escape. Meanwhile, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to sit in that empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of what we used to be. So I drove. I left Minneapolis, following the Mississippi River south, heading toward New Orleans with no real plan, just the open road, endless miles, and a desperate need to put distance between myself and the wreckage of my marriage. With every hour behind the wheel, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but at least free from the weight of Molly's choices. Molly's desperation. Days passed, and the silence from Billy became unbearable. Desperate, Molly reached out to the only person she thought might help, Billy's best friend Tom. Please, Tom, she begged, her voice cracking. Tell me where he is. Give me something. I just need to talk to him. Tom was silent for a long moment before finally speaking. Molly? Billy doesn't want to be found. Her heart clenched. Please, she whispered. Just tell him. Tell him that I love him. That I'm sorry. That I'll do anything to make things right. But deep down she knew. Billy was gone. And there was no guarantee he would ever come back.